Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Vader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch back up with Brooke of Interaction Metrics. She specializes in really all things customer and really the metrics of the interaction of you and customer, and taking that away from a personal view of that and hey, did I do a good job? I think I did a good job. I've been doing this long enough. I'm probably pretty darn good with interacting with customers, to actually using scientific methodology to score those discussions and giving points, for certain things like, hey, I said the name of the company. I said my name. I asked if I could help, or I showed empathy in a conflict, and, really taking that from it sounds like a good call to here's some actual measurables that we're going to look at when I listen to these interactions with customers. And then taking those, what they observed, and offering individual coaching and work. Anyway, we'll go through the whole thing during the interview, but it's just kind of fascinating to me that things that we kind of sometimes take for granted are our customer service or our customer facing individuals. Are they interacting in a way that we would find positive and the customer is appreciative and they're going to continue doing business with us? It's just kind of fascinating to hear. How do we observe that, score that, and improve that so that we can have great long-term relationships with these customers that, really they're high transactional customers, and we really have to honor that going forward. Anyhow, it was a great conversation as usual with Martha, and I really hope you all enjoy it too. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Another thing I like about this company is they do it all in-house. They take on these applications and build them into the platform using state-of-the-art Microsoft technology. No third-party bolt-ons for them. This is important because when you need technical assistance, they are the single point of contact. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. Well, hey, Martha, welcome back to Distribution Talk. It's been a little while, and always a pleasure to hear from you.
Well, thanks, Jason. It's always fun to do this with you.
Absolutely. Well, if you wouldn't mind, for the audience, could you kind of give a brief synopsis of your background and how you got into the realm of customer service, and then maybe talk a little bit about customer experience versus customer service and the things that you're doing right now?
Sure. Great. So, way back in the day, I worked for a large customer service center. So customer loyalty, customer service center, which transferred into my next job, which was a very early .com. So we're talking late 90s, and it was a company called food.com, and really got some great operations chops out of that. And then worked for a late.com called Lucy.com, which turned into consulting work for Nike and Adidas. And that was where I really saw a hole in the market for serious customer experience. So not just customer service, but customer experience measurement and improvement. And so started the company, and then they were early clients of Interaction Metrics. So Interaction Metrics, my company, was founded in 2004. So pre-Facebook. And it's been a lot of fun. I have a small staff of co-analysts, and we work with mostly B2B companies, but not entirely. So companies like Bosch and Yaskawa, California State Bar. In fact, we're doing a findings presentation for them in a couple of hours. So a diversity of clients, but what unifies our clients is that they're really clear that they're serious about the customer experience, of which customer service is a part of the customer experience. So I think that's how you hopped into this, was like, oh, is there customer service, customer experience? Because I think some people use them sort of interchangeably, and they're adamantly not. Customer service is a subset of customer experience. right? So customer experience, when the customer thinks about their experience, they're thinking about, did you have the right inventory? Did it arrive on time?
Right.
If you didn't have it in stock, were there alternates? What's the quality of your website? What about the portal that's just for me and my companies, which might be distributors or
Right.
OEMs? Okay, well, what about customer service? So that's a part of it, but it's not the all of it. Supposing I have to return a product for repair, warranties, all of that is customer experience. In fact, there's almost nothing about a company that's not customer experience. I would say price, maybe I would take out of the customer experience realm.
Well, I was just going to say that, really from a physical sense, it's the moment you walk in the door, as a customer,
Right.
it's the moment you walk in the door. It's the feeling you get. And again, that might be a brick and mortar, site, but it could also mean virtual as well. How do you feel when you interact with this organization?
Right, which is the people, but it's also the parking lot. It's also the layout of the goods. It's also, did they have interesting things? Like sometimes you go into Target and the shelves are empty and it's just a weird experience. It's just
It's
weird.
depressing.
It's depressing. And
Yes.
it's nothing about the people. They didn't do anything wrong. That's not customer service. It's the back end, it's the operations, it's the
Right.
supply chain.
Yeah.
And so experience really is that everything that faces the customer, and then there's the C-suite, which is outside of that. Like they're looking at profit and loss and they're looking at price points. So that's different. But just about everything else about a company really is customer experience, including things that are not your company. Like, for instance, when it comes to supply chain slash delivery, it's almost impossible to not be thinking of Amazon. I don't care if you're ordering B2B or consumer. You're like, look, Amazon can get this thing to me in 2 days or sometimes even overnight. Sometimes I'll order something at midnight and it's there at 8 in the morning. Like, so I'm always, and I think everybody is always subconsciously or consciously saying, well, if Amazon can do it, why can't you do it?
Right.
When it comes to the supply chain, the delivery aspect, when it comes to beautiful, I think you can't help but think, well, if Apple can package this thing, like just it's really nice to open their package. Why is your package just like with this big plastic mess and I have to get special scissors to get
Yeah,
into the thing?
sure.
What
Sure.
is, so
Well, that all leads to how the perception of that organization.
right, which my point is that it's not just shaped by what the organization does, it's also shaped by surrounding competitor and comparable companies. And
Hmm.
too often it's just like, what do we do? And not looking at what is the competition doing. So with our clients, I almost always encourage them to be asking questions in the survey or in the interviews about, tell us about who's the competition? Well, what do they do well?
Right.
What does
Right.
XYZ do better or worse? Or, really framing it up in terms of that. Or if it's customer service, mystery shopping the competition and really staying abreast of what is the competition doing with their emails, their chats, their phone calls, because it's part of the experience. It's very rare that a customer is such an undying advocate that they only will buy from you, regardless of whether you have it in stock or not. Or do you know what I mean? The competition is always at play, as are comparable companies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So about a year ago or so, and again, I'm not sure on the timing. You can correct me on this. You had a project come about with a distributor. How long did that last? Just out of curiosity, I can't remember.
Yeah, about a year.
About a year. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of share a little bit about this project that you jumped into with this, traditional privately held business. What happened? Why did they even want to engage your services? What was the outcome? Please, if you wouldn't mind, just sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. It was a project that came about because there was a sense among some of the managers that that their customer service just wasn't that good.
Hmm.
And so I asked them, really kind of drilled into like, are you only interested in customer service? Because that's very important. Because
Right.
we know
Right.
that, especially with a distributor, there, like we were just kind of riffing on, there are aspects that about the experience that have nothing to do with customer service.
Right.
And they were like, no, 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 not interested in anything other
Okay.
than customer service. Okay. So just customer service. I said, great. We'll start with a survey, because your vibe about this is, well, our customer service isn't that good. Let's ask the customers. And let's ask the employees, like, what do they think? Because honestly, if the customers are saying, the customer service is pretty good and the employees are agreeing, everybody's like, well, a few managers think it's not that good. If everybody else thinks it's pretty good, well, done.
Yeah, let's not mess around with this. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's done. Like, and I always say you're never going to get to perfect, but if you're at like 90%, you're at the point of diminishing returns. Okay. So we did surveys. I think, as I recall, there were 3 levels to the survey. There was to the customers.
Yeah.
And these were the most engaged customers. In other words, that they were buying with some frequency. So they'd really have something to say about the customer service. Also to the executives, and then also to the frontline customer service reps themselves. So 3 surveys.
Now, quick question on the customer base. This particular entity, I think, multiple states that they cover. You over multiple. Did you all survey all these different places, or was it primarily concentrated in their headquarters, or how did that go about?
So customers among all of the Western states.
Okay, gotcha. So it was very diversified. You could get a sense of what people in other states thought about it.
Right. So yeah, and do comparative segmented analysis. So for instance, how does Nevada compare with Oregon? How does Oregon compare with California, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
Because there's also like, well, supposing we find out, really customer service is pretty good, except for this one state, this one set of reps, then
Right.
let's just focus on that. That's going to be a much smaller project, and that's fine with us. What's really important to us, and it comes from my background, is that this is data driven.
Yes.
Right? Like it's empirical, it's scientific. It's not, just somebody feels some particular way that Monday morning, but that we can really prove this. And what we found is that actually the customers agreed with the managers who thought customer service isn't that good. Overall, the rating was something like a 54 on a scale of 0 to 100.
Okay.
Right. So that's in school speak, that's an F grade, right? Like if you brought home.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so if you brought that home to mom and dad, they'd be like, hey, Jason, what's going on here? Are you partying or like
step up? Yeah. Step it up, kid.
Yeah. Step it up. So, okay. And then in terms of the executives, they were very clear. They didn't think what they could overhear of customer service. They didn't think it was good. And the employees felt like, well, yeah, but we're not even trained on customer service.
Good point. Okay.
Like we don't even know what we're supposed to do. So, okay. So that sets up the case for F grade, executives overhearing it, aren't impressed, and employees say, but we don't even know what's expected of us. Now that's a case for we need some further involvement here. We need a program.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So that's how it started. And what we proposed was now let's actually get some documentation. So those are the perceptions. Now let's analyze the customer service.
Yeah.
Let's analyze what actually happened in a customer service interaction. So fortunately, our client had recording in place. They didn't have it turned on, but I encouraged them to turn it on.
Recording in place. You mean through the phone system? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You know how they say this call may be recorded?
Yes. Now, I'm with you now. Okay.
So they had that, but they didn't have it turned on. So now it's this call may be, well, I hope it's saying this call may be recorded for training and quality purposes. Or, however that goes. And the reps need to know, usually they sign something or, just know it is saying, we understand we're being recorded for just for training, not for punitive reasons, just so we can train to customer service.
Right.
Okay. So then my staff and I listened to a statistically valid sample of those recordings and put together workshops. On here's what so establishing criteria for what makes for good customer service.
Yeah.
And then training, because it's not enough to just, okay, we're scoring and keeping dashboards, but actually holding the workshops. In the workshops, it's one of my favorite parts of the entire company, and I always lead them. I really love it. And so these were, face-to-face workshops. I think some of them were Zoom based because the reps were, it was too much to fly them in.
From distance and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But all of the managers were flown in, and there was a presentation on here's what we found out, and here's how we're listening. We're going to be listening and evaluating customer service to step up the game on customer service.
So you're listening to these calls.
Yeah.
And there's some sort of things you're listening for. What are you listening for? I mean, what kind of things got them a cool guy score? What got them, a bad score? I mean, what were the things? I mean, what were the different things you're listening for?
Yeah, no, I really hoped you were going to go there, Jason, because that's really what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes with customer service, there's this sort of like, I know it when I see it, or these sort of subjective, I like him or I don't like him. And really, it's not scientific and it's not useful, and it really doesn't help customer service reps improve their game. So now for every distributor and every company, the criteria is going to be different. But for all companies, there are 4 dimensions to customer service. Should I describe those 4 dimensions?
Sure. Go for
and
it.
This is, whether you're a distributor or you're Amazon or Starbucks. Okay. The 4 dimensions, the first one is efficiency. Did you value the customer's time?
Okay.
Right? Okay. And then we can get into like, what are the elements of that? But did you value the customer's time? 2, information. Did you answer their questions? Right? In ways that are understandable, in proactive, clear ways. Okay. 3 is connection. Did you sound like you were listening? Right?
Okay.
Did you sound like you were affirming the customer, like you were pleasant to talk with? Okay. And dimension 4 is what we call differentiation or pop. Were you different in some way, or did you just sound like any call center anywhere? Right? Was there something that was in some way unique about this particular interaction? So again, it's efficiency, valuing time, information, answering questions, connection, sounding, like you're listening and understanding. And 4, was there something just a little bit different, a little bit special?
So one of the things you had mentioned was about answering the question. Could you go into that a little bit more?
You mean that dimension we call information?
Information, right. Like, did they actually answer what the customer was asking?
So for instance, in the project you're talking about, that was worth 50% of the call. And for email, it was worth even 65% of the email interaction, because that's what the customer cares about. They're not calling to cry or share their little story about a party coming up. They're calling because they want to know, what's the inventory? If you don't have it in stock, when are you going to bring it in? Can you expedite it? Okay, what are some alternates? When can you get those alternates? Right. That's the purpose of any. You call Alaska Airlines, it's not to like, talk about your dog or anything.
I'm having a great day.
Yeah, it's like, okay, is it at 8:00 in the morning or 9:00 in the morning? Why are there no tickets showing? Oh, you can open up a ticket. Yeah, it's going to cost me $100 more. That's fine. You're looking for answers to questions, and so it's typically the most important part of any interaction. And how we define that, what we mean by proactivity and what we mean by clarity, that entirely depends on the client. Right. And so, there are exceptions. Like with Starbucks, it's Monday morning. What's the most important part of the interaction? It's efficiency. Did you value my time?
Give me my damn coffee.
Yeah. Like if I see a line out down the block, well, obviously I'm going over to Pete's. Like, you are not valuing my time. Get more staff. So it depends. And then the information is that you got, like I said, a double latte, dollop of cream, like you got the order correct. That's worth something too. But your very first shot is, how long is that wait going to be?
How long did it
So
take
sometimes that's the most, right. So sometimes that's the most important. And all of these things depend and require very precise criteria. But just in general, the most important part is, did you answer the freaking question? And did you answer it in a way that I understand? No internal lingo, and giving me alternates when need be, and giving me next steps, like not just, well, it will be at will call. Like, when will it be at will call? In an hour? In 10 minutes? Tomorrow? Like, really seeing the entire answer through. Sometimes we use the expression, leaving no stone unturned.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I can see that being a very big part of that scoring method.
Yeah.
Where would a greeting fall in? What dimension there? So, thanks for calling the distribution team. This is Jason. Da, da. Where would a greeting fall into those different dimensions?
Usually that's a part of connection.
Okay. Okay.
So it's like
Gotcha.
right away, do you sound like I want to talk to you? Do you say, "Hi, this is distribution team,"
Yeah.
or "Hi, this is Martha with distribution team. How may I help?"
Yeah.
And well, that's a tiny part of the interaction. It does set the stage for
Oh, yeah.
everything that happens,
Yeah.
right? Like, because if you're like, "Hi, this is Martha,
Mhm.
how may I help?" The customer feels like now they need to rush.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of impeding on you. Like,
Right.
like you're a pretty busy person and they better talk quickly. And maybe they forget one of the items they meant to order. It's a small part, but it does set the stage. Does this person sound like they're listening and affirming, like they like their job?
Hmm.
So that's a question, just as a little tangent, that I often ask when I'm just out and about in stores or whatever, coffee shop lines, or,
Yeah.
do you like your job? And it's really interesting,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely.
Right? Because that's like kind of it just tells me, is this company invested in customer service? Because if they're like, no, and
Hmm.
that tells me
Yeah.
that there's not a lot of investment in the reps. So anyway, it's just kind of an aside, but it's like this idea of you can tell right away from the pacing and the tone and the words they use, how connected they are, and do they appear to enjoy their job, right? And it sets the stage for what's going to happen over the course of the next 2 minutes or 10 minutes.
Got it. So again, I'm really fascinated with the whole scoring
Yeah,
of that phone call.
for sure.
Do you get points for saying your name? Do you get points for how did that work? Just
Right,
in a
right.
simple way.
With that, it's more like subtractive points
Okay.
because we assume that you're going to say your name, you're going to say thank you, you're going to say the company's name. And if you don't, that's called what we call a distancing cue.
Okay.
But it's so assumed that you're going to do it that on most projects, we put that under distancing cues, kind of like if you interrupt or profanity or over familiar expression, all of that's under that category of distancing cues. I
Okay.
guess I should say there are 5 dimensions. So there's the efficiency, time, and connection, differentiation. And then there's this
Mhm.
bucket of distancing cues, which spans it can span everything. So an example of a connection would
Mhm.
be using their name, Jason,
Got it.
at
Okay.
some point in the conversation. And not just like reading back. So, what's your address? Oh, that's Jason Bader at
Right.
123 Green
Right.
Street. Not like that. That doesn't count, right? It's at some point, Jason using their name.
Yes.
It's always nice to use it once. And it depends on the project. Like, if we have projects where phone calls are really long. We're talking 20 minutes, to use it 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
And it depends on the project where it's used. Sometimes it's the beginning. We have a client right now where we're doing customer service evaluation where they need to say it in the beginning because the CRM system is queuing Jason Bader calling in.
Mm.
So the rep is instructed to say, "Hi, I'm Nancy. Welcome, Jason," or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, that they need to use it right away. So there it depends on the project and what kind of systems and technologies they have set up. But in any event, using the name is almost always one of what we call an element or a cue, and that falls under the bucket of connection.
Okay.
Now, another example of connection would be what we call listening/affirming words. So that would be, "Oh, I am so sorry. That was supposed to arrive this afternoon. I'll make sure it gets." Now, what happened there? Yeah, you're going to make sure it gets there this afternoon, but starting with, "I am so sorry that happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
I am so," not like, "Oh, okay, we'll be sure to get it out tomorrow." Right? Like, where's the "I'm sorry"?
Right. Where's the empathy? Where's that? Hey, I know this is we've put you in a very bad position.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that. And likewise, if somebody's placing an order, you don't have to sound over the top with it, but just like, "Great. Oh, good. We have that in stock. Did you need 2 or 4?"
Right.
And just like throughout a conversation, generally we're looking for affirming or listening words 2 to 3 times. Again, it depends on the client, depends on the
Hmm.
average length of interaction. But those are words that, and it's not about tone. Like you can sound all warm and fuzzy, but if you're not saying, I'm sorry when, and I'm sorry is needed, or I understand, or
Hmm.
that sounds difficult, or
Yeah.
likewise, terrific when it is a good thing, or awesome if you're young and it's a good thing. So the range of these affirming listening words depends a little bit on who the reps are, because they never
Hmm.
should talk out of their, it never should sound unnatural. So
Hmm.
we do a lot in the workshops about finding what are natural words for you? Because if they're the words I would use, they're probably not going to use them.
Right.
Or
Right.
vice versa. But also, what are the words that are correct for the client? So there's that, kind of blending. So that's a little bit what connection is generally about. Efficiency, that can be about many things, but one of the most obvious, this is always a factor in valuing their time, is how you need to sometimes put the customer on hold?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Not a good thing. You don't, yeah, that's not good on the other side. So there's got to be a way to do it.
So you have to ameliorate it, right? Like
Yeah.
in almost all of our scoring protocol, we take off points, and again, depends on the client how many, but in general it's 10, sometimes it's 20 points. If the rep doesn't clearly say, I need to put you on hold to do something, and the hold will be approximately X long, and usually overestimate that. Like if you think it's
Right.
going to be 30 seconds, say it's going to be about a minute.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And why you're doing it, and not just, let me put you on hold for a minute. It's like, let me put you on hold. I need to check inventory.
Right.
It will be about a minute. Like that's a complete statement. If you do half of it, you get half points,
Hmm.
because there are two parts. It's why you're doing it, how long it will
Hmm.
be. All too often, without our workshops, we just hear, the rep talking to themselves, whistling to themselves while they look things up. And then you
Okay.
hear the customer, the customer, we get it in the file, right? Saying, or in the old school on tape, you'll hear the customer saying, are you there?
Yeah. Are you still there? Yeah.
Are you still there? Right. And so we
Hmm.
know from how the customer is queuing, not just our research, but how customers are queuing universally. They appreciate why they're being put on hold and how long it's going to take.
Hmm.
Right.
Oh, I think back to some of the interactions I've had, with a cable company or internet company or a bank or something like that. In many cases, I do hear a lot of the things that you're talking about, that someone has taught them to express the length of time that they'll be gone and the purpose for their leaving. So it is making sense as I start thinking back about some interactions.
Right, right. It would be interesting to know whether that cable company is scoring the calls, because objective scoring always improves performance. It's just human nature. If you know
Yeah.
you're getting a score from an objective third party, you're incentivized to do better, especially
Yeah.
if that's then followed up with some kind of material incentive, right? There are clear paths toward better customer service, right? Like a material incentive. We have a client that does Amazon gift cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's swag from the company. It can be the sneakers or whatever it might be. Gift card at the employee gift shop. In Portland, it can be Powell's bookstore.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, it depends on what those material incentives are that then align with a third party evaluation. I mean, these are tried and true ways to improve performance. And by the way, for that client that you're referring to, in the space of about 6 months, maybe 7 months, we improved performance by 50%.
That's
So,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah. So it really is the great spur to performance improvement, is being able to score and share what those scores are, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's my understanding that some of the executive team of that company actually listened to a few of these recordings, and
Mm,
frankly, they were appalled at a couple of them. A couple of poor examples. I'll put it that way. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the eye opener for an executive team or, whoever the champion was, the person that brought you in to evaluate is that, you're going to hear some things that are not always pleasant.
Right. Right. But you know what? I would just kind of doubling down on this point. It's like, okay, great. Executive team hears it and they're like, "Ugh." But when you see a score attached to it, the score is 4 or the score is 40
Right.
or
Right.
whatever it is, or it's a fantastic call and the score is 94. Like that just helps kind of frame it up because this is something we do for so many different companies. And so to have that like here's this objective number that's attached to that event is incredibly helpful. Like
Hmm.
it's not just bad, it's a 44 on a
Yeah.
scale of 0 to 100
Yes.
bad. Does that make sense?
Oh,
So yeah.
absolutely.
And again, it just lines everybody up.
And I think again, once you are getting the true scoring, you actually have backup data, and you have recordings and you have things like this. That I guess my question is, I know you did workshops and you did some individual coaching.
Mm.
What was the reaction? What did the individuals who, basically were caught with a poor score, how did they react to this type of education, scrutiny? I don't know. How would you put it?
Yeah, in general, it was very, very positive.
Hmm.
There, especially, and this was kind of toward the end of the project we did, and this wasn't me, this is one of my associate analysts, did one-on-one coaching,
Okay,
Zoom-based coaching, and that was really, really well received.
good.
In part because of her background. She's had a background doing tutoring. And
Mm,
so it
okay,
really, like, she really knew how to do these role plays and one-on-ones. And by this time, we had amassed so much data. For most of them, it was a really feel good,
yeah.
kind of a warm and fuzzy that they were getting that kind of attention. I would guess in general, there was this sort of like, oh, we matter. We're being invested in.
That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it wasn't all negative. Yeah, it wasn't only. It's like, oh, these folks actually are going to train us this time, rather than just expect us to, be rock star customer service people.
Right, when we don't know, and we said that on the survey, like
Right.
we don't know. So the workshops with 10 people, I think that's really productive, and especially with the role play. Like insist on role play. But then on the one-on-ones, I think that was also well received. So I guess where I go with that is it's a multi-prong, multi-layered approach. Like you have to have the big workshops. You can't one-on-one everything.
Sure.
But then people who are really suffering with how do I do this? Then you go in with one-on-one coaching. So the larger workshops and also, meetings with the management team to let them know what's going on and
Hmm.
recommendations and what we see. And sometimes what we're seeing is, it's not the reps and their training, it's the processes that you have. I have to say, Jason, all too often there's oh, reps are bad.
Hmm.
Well, actually, that's only a third of any customer, maybe half of any customer service event.
Yeah.
There's always the processes that you have, the CRM systems that you have, and the policies that you have that lie underneath that performance. If you don't have good software, the reps can cover up for some of it, but not all of it.
Right. Right. No, it makes
Right.
it makes a lot of sense. Thinking about the individual coaching and
Right.
the reception of that individual coaching, because I think and this is going to be a generalization, but those of us of my vintage, sometimes we're a little stuck in our ways and we don't necessarily love to be corrected, and it may have been difficult. Did you all find that maybe even generational side or that there were folks that really didn't accept this very well?
We find that phrased well, everybody accepts as well. Actually, I did a workshop just yesterday, medical practice. So
Okay.
totally, totally different vertical here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was the front desk people and it was just anybody who answered the phone basically for
Mhm.
this medical practice.
Mhm.
Because sometimes the front desk people are all busy. And so you'd have somebody from accounting step in. So we had them in this Zoom coaching as well. And I got an email this morning just that they did a big powwow afterwards and had all these to-dos and they were already role playing even some more. And
Hmm.
one of them who had really suffered, and some of them had been with the company for 10 years or more,
Yeah.
like was so stuck in their ways. And one of them who'd been there for 10 years took it upon herself to set up a little cheat sheet. Here's what we need to say to patients who call in.
Almost like a script to work off of. Yeah.
Yeah, just like a little basic
Yeah.
algorithm, a few words, just
Yeah.
reminders,
Yeah.
because they don't
Yeah.
need to do everything. They need to do,
Right.
80 or 90% to have a huge impact on the patient
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
And so, just phrased correctly, like everybody, myself included, my staff included, we all have the opportunity to improve. We all have the opportunity to optimize, and interactions
Yeah.
are difficult. They're intrinsically difficult. It's also intrinsically interesting, right? That how do you get the most out of the few minutes or few hours that you have with a person, right? With another person, and how do you do it in a way, especially if it's very short, that they hang up the phone or they close out that email and say, "Wow, I like them." That's interesting. And it's not something you're born with. It's
Hmm.
something that we need to deconstruct and show you the elements of and role play and have fun with until it's not perfect, but it's very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how long ago did you wrap up this project with this distributor?
I think just a couple of months ago.
Okay. Okay. Just a couple of months
Yeah.
ago. So, do you
Yeah.
have any sense of how it stuck? The traction. Have they been able to give you any feedback as to the interactions are have improved or they're continuing? I'm sorry. I know they would have improved after post workshop. We're all on a high, but I'm thinking of long term traction.
Right. We don't know. Like
Gotcha.
that's the problem with projects. That's why
Yeah.
we always
Yeah.
encourage clients to do programs, like even if it's a quarterly program,
Hmm.
because we don't know. And having objective scientific data is absolutely crucial to knowing how you're doing. I would guess, like, if I'm on the inside staff and I'm tasked with improving people, I'm going to say everybody's improved, right? Like, that's
Hmm.
human nature. Like,
Sure.
if that's my job, well,
Mhm.
there everybody's getting a 95.
Right.
Like, how
Yeah.
could it not be that? So that's the old, we have a client who says, well, Fox watching the hen house,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Sure.
not a good program. And so we always say, like, anything you can do in house that's helpful, do it. That's like great. It's never like
Hmm.
a one person or one company effort. It's a multi-pronged effort. It involves the reps, it involves managers, involves outside resources. But we would say maybe that's one, because I think sometimes a question you ask me is, what's the challenge
Right.
for a project,
Yeah.
right? And I would say for this client, it was getting them to fully buy into the importance of objective data. And
Hmm.
maybe because they don't have that ethos, they don't have that spirit behind what they do in everything else, you know?
Right.
So I don't know how they're doing. I would say, at minimum, like a quarterly program, because we had been doing daily scoring.
Sure.
That was the kind of how we, in the end, like really got a big ramp up, is we were doing daily and weekly feedback. We had a dashboard and you could filter the dashboard. It's really
Hmm.
super cool because we believe in making it everything abundantly clear. So you could use our dashboard, you could filter it down to location, to reps, to, just the bad calls, just the bad emails. You could really filter it probably realistically 24 different ways.
Hmm.
And with some of our clients, I'll go visit them on site and you'll see our dashboards up on monitors, like throughout the facility, which, it's an ego blast for me,
For
of
sure. Of
course,
course. Of course.
because I'm
Yeah.
human, but they do it because it's really helpful. It keeps
Yeah.
everybody on the same page, right? So in any event, I don't know how they're doing, but I would encourage them to think, about, just like I'd encourage any client to think about a program. Doesn't have to be daily, but
Hmm.
where there is always some kind of outside third party view through surveys, through interviews, through call scoring, email scoring,
Hmm.
plethora of methods, but so that there is some kind of other vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, really, what I was thinking is like, me, shoot, maybe I should just give him a call and just find out what I think. Just give him a quick
Yeah,
call and
yeah,
check it. I
yeah,
do a little secret shopper there, but no,
yeah.
I think that's important. Is to look at. It's great that you invest in this, but then what is your long term plan as well? And that's definitely something to consider when you're embarking on a really a change to your organization. That all right, well, how do we maintain traction? How do we make sure this thing is sticking with us?
Right. So change management is a whole discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And change management is always called a program. It's never called a project.
Right.
There's
Right.
never, and we're done. We've changed and that's it. Because not to continually invoke human nature, but human nature is to slide back down.
Sure.
You've got all kinds of human nature forces. Human nature is we're good. We're in a good place. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what any inside manager is going to say. If their job is about that, right? If their job is to prove performance, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, that's why this medical practice that I workshopped with yesterday, they require these, quarterly or more
Yeah.
frequent workshops, often going over the same material because they know that people they love the workshops because without them, people do kind of slip down like that's, and we mystery shop them many times over the course of the year and their
Mm-hmm.
competition because staff changes, their
Mm-hmm.
services change, and people kind of go back to where they were. Wasn't there a movie once? Oh, yeah, 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 with Robert De Niro, and they had some incredible drug, and they gave
Yes.
them this.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? It was like the
Awakenings.
awakenings, right? Well, it's like
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
got all awakened. Everybody was great. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
high. Everybody's going to the park and having fun. And then it stopped working and everybody slipped
Right.
back down. And it's like, that's a sort of an exaggeration of human nature, but nevertheless, it's like things can work. You get these exciting workshops and then things slip down if you don't have a corrective in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes think there's maybe not enough discussion about what is the difference. Everybody knows sort of the vocabulary difference between a project and a program, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think there's not enough like just sitting and reflecting on what's the difference between a project and a program.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We need to jump into how does somebody engage you in a project? Because honestly, this is an extraordinarily common challenge inside of distribution. I mean, obviously of the other verticals, but in distribution, and I think you don't see a lot of it. I'll be honest with you, you just don't see a lot of this type of scrutiny and this type of investment. So, how does somebody get a hold of you if they want to, put together a project slash then eventually program with you?
Right. And it almost always starts with a project, which is totally
Sure,
fine. Sure.
sure.
A few ways. One, you could just Google on Martha Brooke, Brooke,
Hmm.
Portland, Oregon, if need be. Portland, Oregon, Martha Brooke. The company is Interaction Metrics, which really, it's a long, cumbersome name, but it really describes what we do. Interaction, like us, you and me,
Yeah.
we're talking. What's the quality of that interaction?
Mm-hmm.
Judged from myriad
Right.
ways, and metrics, putting sincere measurement on those interactions, the quality of those interactions. So interaction
Right.
metrics like the number, METRICS. So
Hmm.
just Googling on that definitely will come to the top. And LinkedIn is always great. You drop me a message on LinkedIn.
Sure.
And by the way, I do conferences outside of podcasts. I
Hmm.
speak at conferences, and sometimes that's a really helpful way for some organizations to get to know our work just a little bit better and see more examples and
Absolutely.
just learn more about like the principles of customer service or the principles of customer experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a great way for people to get exposure to you. And of course, always we will have, show notes and have ways to get a hold of you. And actually people can find you on my website on distributionteam.com and distribution talk if they want to find you. So we're going to get you found. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
If somebody has an interest, we are going to get you found.
Thank you.
So yeah. Well, anyhow, Martha, always a pleasure to catch up with you and see what you were up to. And I thought this was a really kind of an interesting one to dive into because, very, very relevant to the audience base here. So I really appreciate you explaining, a lot of the different methodologies and the scientific side of this a little bit more.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being interested in customer service because it's important. We're all affected by it every day throughout the day. We are exposed to good, bad, and indifferent customer service kind of all day long.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, thank you again for doing this, and I look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.